Hello, and welcome to this little channel. Thank you everyone for supporting the channel up until now. Today we will continue the story of Suzuki Satoru as Ain't Soul Gown in the New World.
The elves looked at each other. Honestly, as our village did not have any dark elves, we've only met them here for the first time. That's why we didn't have any opinions about them. The most we know was that they migrated from the north to the Great Forest. We've heard of their dark skins from hearsay, and were surprised to see that was true. I don't remember the villagers saying anything bad about the dark elves, but I would ask you to keep in mind that this is only about our village. It looked like they were no longer trying to flatter him or tell any lies. So the younger, maybe calling them young was stretching it a bit. Elves didn't have any bad opinions against dark elves. Even though they were a minority, it looked like they weren't being persecuted. Perhaps it was because the elves didn't have the leeway for such things when they were being threatened by an external force, the theocracy. Or perhaps the forest was just that much of a difficult place to live in. By the way, what about the undead? Enemies that sully the forest. Disgusting beings. We rarely encounter any though. Oh, yes, immediate answers. While Aints wondered why they weren't taking into consideration the feelings of the twins' master, he couldn't say that out loud. He certainly asked them to speak honestly just now, but this was too honest. These girls were the type who would get fired because they truly believed in the CEO's words when they would ask them to be informal. Still, with that established, he was now certain that he could not be the emissary. Maybe this was for the best. He could use this as an excuse to not be the emissary. It was certainly not because Aints wasn't talented enough. Or should he take the steps in proper order, dispatch diplomats, start diplomatic relations, and then head over to the Elven country? But we don't have such diplomats. The fact that we can't trust the human officials in charge of internal affairs is a weak point. Or maybe there are some and I just don't know about it. In that case, how about asking Albedo to dispatch adventurers? No. That system isn't stable enough yet to send them out to represent the nation. Or maybe I am wrong. After all, it's me we're talking about. If he informed Albedo about this, she would probably say that the adventurers would work just fine. But the critical issue here is the lack of time. Due to the hostilities with the theocracy, the Elven country was pretty much pushed into a corner. This had been the case since before these elves were captured. If things went badly, it was entirely possible that the Elven country would be destroyed soon. The collapse of the Elven country was not a setback for Aints, because they would be far more effective in establishing diplomatic relations if the Sorcerer Kingdom could extend their help in that scenario. So, would it be better if they just waited for the collapse? That was not the case. They didn't have the luxury of watching the situation from the sidelines, especially because he highly valued the rarity of the Dark Elf lives. Maybe I should just send the two of them ahead. No, I can't do that. I don't feel comfortable sending them alone into an unknown place. Although I understand that they are level 100 NPCs and are not children. We should just ignore the stuff on international relations and concentrate on getting them friends. I should also go with them just as I have planned. He did not plan to join in the war with the theocracy and save the Elven country at this point in time. Aints didn't want to turn the theocracy into the Sorcerer Kingdom's enemy due to his independent action. He wanted to know Albedo and Demiurge's thoughts on this matter, but he feared that they might find out his skull was empty if he did that. If Aints couldn't manage the conversation, his idiotic utterances might end up being taken seriously and cause damage to Nazarick in the future. It's not a bad idea to tell them to evacuate just the Dark Elves after visiting the Elven country. In that case, is there a need to take someone along other than the twins? It was better to take stealthy guards like Hanzo's along instead of leading something like an army in case he did decide to take someone along. Like that time in the Dwarf Kingdom. I see. Ain't stared at the three elves. They would be in that lizardman's position this time. Is something the matter? Nothing, I am just talking to myself. He could take one among the three with him, leaving the other two here. As long as he held them hostage, the lone elf probably wouldn't do anything that would be negative to Aints. Not bad at all. Even if they understood that they were being held hostage, he could insist that was not the case. Aints looked over to the twins. They immediately understood his intentions. Aura, Mary, and Lumiere returned to the table. By the way, what kind of gifts would make elves happy? Things like gold and gemstones. We don't use metal currency, so I don't think gold would work. I think our village would be most happy about the food and maybe rare herbs. Minor scrapes and such can be healed by magic, but poison and disease need a talented druid to cure them. So portable herbs are highly valued. Not clothes, since we also make them from elf trees. Homes, arrows, and even clothes. Looks like elven druid magic is very convenient. You can't do that, right, Mary? Why yes, I can't use such magic. Perhaps this peculiar brand of druid magic itself was a mark of Elven Progress. He wanted those techniques if possible, but Nazarek's residents probably wouldn't be able to use them. This reaffirms the fact that making the residents of this world prostrate before Nazarek and bringing them under its reign would be the main factor that could tip the scales of victory in a hypothetical guild war. But I should assume there were guilds, those who were teleported in the past, who already did this. I should tell this to Albedo and have her look into rethinking our national strategy on war. It stood to reason that if someone like Aints could think of this, other players could as well. Only idiots would think of themselves as someone special. Maybe it was a good idea to transport large amounts of food through gate upon reaching the elven villages to make them more friendly to the sorcerer kingdom. He remembered it being effective in the dwarf kingdom. Things would go smoothly if he could just remember his experiences in the dwarf kingdom and build on them. I also felt like wanting to run away then too, didn't I? The best way to do this is to first find the Crescent Lake, visit the royal capital that was said to be on its shore to collect information, and then head to Dark Elves village. We are going to a Dark Elf village. Aura looked like she wanted to say something, but she probably couldn't ask in detail in front of the three elves. If possible, Aints didn't want to tell them they were visiting the Dark Elves village to find them friends. He didn't want them to make friends just because he ordered them to. That's right, that's what I intend to do. I am going to need your help there. He deliberately ignored Aura's behavior, but he still got a pair of energetic affirmations in return. What should I do next? Persuade the others. I can't make the same excuse I used for the Dwarven expedition. He wasn't confident in solving the next problem, but he had to do something because he also wanted to use this as the groundwork to bring the concept of paid vacations to Nazarek. At that point, maybe they were waiting for the conversation to die down. The dishes were brought over. Well, enjoy yourselves. With Aints encouraging them, the elves took to the food with relish. What would a person do when faced with a challenge? There were many methods suitable for overcoming one, and this time Aints chose to use the advantage of numbers and location. With Aura and Mary flanking him, Aints sat down on the throne in the audience hall prepared by the guardians, finally holding the original staff of Aints Ulgaun after a long time. The ultimate form of the absolute ruler of Nazarek, and the guild leader Aints Ulgaun, so to speak. Still, his victory against the opponent that would be appearing soon was not a certain thing. The opponent was the true last boss, a boss more fearsome than something like the Devourer of the Nine Worlds, Aints thought as he gulped with his non-existent throat. He had already gone through the simulations multiple times, but Aints was just an ordinary person. He likely doesn't even reach the foot of the mountain that was his opponent's intellect. So, there's nothing else to do, except leaving it all to luck. He was placing his hopes on his ad-lib skills. He was sure his future self would pull through. Lumiere, who had been waiting before the entrance, announced the opponent's arrival. Very well, let them enter. Understood, Aints Sama. Everyone should have understood who the opponent was by now. It was none other than the last boss Aka Guardian Overseer, Albedo. The moment she noticed Aints, Albedo switched from her usual smiling face to a serious expression. Please forgive me for making you wait. Seeing Albedo bowing deeply near the entrance, Aints ordered her to lift her head up. Don't worry about it, Albedo. I was already informed that you would be late, so you can even say that you are on time. When contacted through message beforehand, Albedo informed him that because she was doing something in the frozen prison, her appearance might not be suitable for an audience. So, she requested some time to dress herself. With no reason to refuse her request, Aints designated this time 30 minutes more than what Albedo requested to meet him here. The fact that Albedo still arrived 10 minutes before the designated time was likely due to her personality. Or maybe it was just an ironclad rule for working adults to always arrive before time. Albedo lifted her head, walked before the throne, and kneeled. Aints informed her immediately. Albedo, I am taking a paid vacation starting right this moment. He could make any number of excuses, but every time he did that, the conversation tended to go in weird directions. So he felt it was better to directly state his goal here. Demiurge was absent this time, so it is unlikely to lead to some strange development. Albedo scrunched up her brows slightly while lifting her head up to look at Aints. She then cast her gaze to the left and right of him, probably checking Aura and Mary's reactions to those words. Aints continued to observe Albedo, worried about her reaction. She replied with a serious expression. Including Nazarek, everything in the Sorcerer Kingdom belongs to Aints Sama. What? He couldn't understand what she was saying at all. No, not one bit. How could one arrive at such a response? What leaps of logic, what train of thought would lead one to such a conclusion? How should Aints respond? He could immediately think of two replies. What the hell are you saying? Was one, the other was yes, just as you have surmised. Of course, he would apply a coat of varnish over those words to make them sound regal. Ain't started churning his imaginary brain matter at full power, but there wasn't enough time. Albedo had already thrown the ball into his court. He needed to send it back as soon as possible. It seems like you are misunderstanding something, Albedo. That's not what I am trying to say. He decided to be honest. Would it have been better if he put on an act like he usually did? Yeah, probably. Anyhow, he managed to protect the image of Ain't Gaon, the absolute ruler of Nazarick, for now. By sacrificing Suzuki Satoru's heart, Albedo made an expression like she realized something. Please forgive me for my mistake, Ain't Sama. She bowed again in panic. No, it's not like I am angry. You don't need to bow. Only scum would enjoy having someone bow their heads for no fault of their own. It seems like the term paid vacation caused a misunderstanding. Nazarick did not have salaries or day-offs. It stood at the pinnacle of black companies. Therefore, it was highly likely that she thought the term paid vacation was a metaphor for something else. You could say this was Aintz's fault because he had yet to implement such a system in Nazarick. Of course, Aints would want to vindicate himself by pointing at the NPC's obstinance and demand for more work.